chief's staff. They apparently also believed that the remark was highly inappropriate and unbecoming of a Portland police sergeant. So why don't we just terminate him, as we would like to do, and be done with it? The answer is this: we are required to follow an arbitration process. This is both as a result of a labor agreement placed with the Portland Police Association, and it's guided in part by state law. At the end of the day, if the Portland Police Association chooses to dispute the outcome of the termination, it goes before an arbitrator. So it isn't the mayor, and it is not the police chief who make the final determination as to whether or not this individual should continue to be employed by the city of Portland. It is up to an arbitrator. And history has shown that arbitrators do not always agree with the mayor or the police chief. In fact, there have been arbitrators who have agreed that the action was an egregious action, yet have still chosen to overturn the penalty suggested by both the mayor and the police chief. This is an egregious case, but the chance that this will go to an arbitrator and then be overturned, I believe, is too great. And therefore, I am of the opinion that we should take the settlement agreement. So why take the settlement agreement? Isn't this a waste of taxpayer dollars? What you're going to hear from legal counsel is that if this goes to arbitration, we're still going to pay the same amount, or maybe even more, during the arbitration process. But what we lose through that arbitration process is the ability to make certain once and for all that this individual is not returned to the Portland Police Bureau. Now I'll just speak for myself. I've heard other people say, well, Ted, aren't you holding the police bureau to an awfully high standard? The answer is yes, I am. I'm holding the police bureau to an awfully high standard, but I want to remind people that other sergeants within the police bureau who brought this attention forward also expect the Portland Police Bureau to be held to a very high standard. And by and large, most people in the Portland Police Bureau would agree that this is egregious conduct. So what are we going to do going forward? The city of Portland has asked that a Senate bill be entered into legislation. It is Senate Bill 383, which provides for sworn members of a law enforcement agency that has adopted a discipline guide or matrix, which we have. If the arbitrator agrees that the alleged misconduct occurred and the disciplinary action imposed by the agency is consistent with the agency's discipline guide or matrix, then the arbitrator cannot change the agency's disciplinary action. This would be common sense legislation. It would respect the rights, the due process rights of police officers. But at the end of the day, since the mayor and the police chief are held accountable for what happens at the Portland Police Bureau and held accountable for the standards of conduct in the Portland Police Bureau, this common sense legislation would return the authority to the mayor and the chief of police to make those decisions. So until the law is changed, we have this difficult decision before us. But I've laid it out. What we're paying for in this settlement is certainty. With that, I'll turn it over to Mark Amber, who is here to take it up from there. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mark Amber, with the City Attorney's Office. A couple of clarifications regarding the settlement agreement. I'm sorry?
I hope you're better as a lawyer than you are as
clarifications regarding the settlement agreement. First of all, under the settlement agreement, yes, there was a payment which approximates the back pay that would be awarded, likely would be awarded if the city goes to arbitration and the arbitrator does not agree with the city and overturns the discipline decision, which, as the mayor outlined, we think there is a significant chance that an arbitrator would overturn the discipline decision, as egregious as the conduct was. One piece of certainty under the settlement agreement that I believe is very important is the police union and the sergeant who is involved. They would agree under the settlement agreement that he would never be eligible to return to work for the police bureau or the city of Portland. If this case goes to arbitration and an arbitrator overturns the decision, there are no guarantees of that at all. An arbitrator in an arbitration proceeding, a labor arbitrator has extremely broad rights to fashion a remedy, a make-whole remedy for the individual employee who is involved. That could include reinstatement, and it certainly would not preclude the individual from being eligible to return to work for the bureau or the city. This settlement agreement would make certain that that doesn't occur. In terms of the labor arbitration process, the labor arbitrator under labor law would apply the principles of just cause in analyzing this case. And we have the sergeant who made this, I think everybody agrees, egregious remark. We have a sergeant who has a 25-plus year record with the Bureau of no significant discipline other than perhaps a couple of issues involving preventable accidents. So basically, on the record, an unblemished career. And a labor arbitrator in evaluating this case certainly will, under the principles of just cause, will certainly evaluate the egregiousness of the conduct, whether the conduct occurred at all, which that's given here. The egregiousness of the conduct will also take into account the officer's record and what the arbitrator would believe would be an appropriate level of discipline given the egregiousness of the conduct, the officer's record, and the comparison of how this type of conduct has been dealt with by other similarly situated employees in the police bureau. And taking all those factors into account, our evaluation is that there is a very significant risk that the city would not be successful in arbitration. We would not be able to uphold the termination, and we would lose all control over whether this officer comes back or doesn't come back, and how much money is paid, which in all likelihood would be at least somewhat more than the amount that would be agreed to under this proposed settlement agreement. And if council has any other questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. So my first question is, what is the $100,000 cover?
Sure, the $100,000 is calculated. It basically would be the back pay from the date the officer was terminated up until there's an agreed upon separation date under the settlement agreement of December 3rd, 2018. And the $100,000 basically would cover his wages for that time period. It would not include lost overtime opportunities, which are typically awarded by a labor arbitrator in these types of circumstances. Would not include the costs of going to arbitration, which including to pay for an arbitrator and the time and effort expense going to the arbitration.
So is there an expectation of overtime if you're a Portland police officer?
For officers and sergeants, there is, generally speaking, they work quite a bit of overtime. And the way the labor arbitrators, the law is developed on that, labor arbitrators, they will typically try to do an estimate of how much overtime that officer would have worked, and they, not to get too much into the weeds, but usually they'll look at the officer with the seniority right above that person, the officer with the seniority right below that person, figure out how much overtime they worked, and that's usually the measure that they'll apply to figure out how much this officer likely would have worked.
But in this particular case, this officer is a retired Portland police officer who was hired back under this We Need More Cops program, right?
Correct.
Came in back as a limited duration employee, right? And so why would there be an expectation that there would be overtime in this particular, for this particular type of officer, right? Because again, it's like he's already retired, he's already getting his city retirement, and this is them coming back at full pay.
Correct.
And we were told when that was passed that they would not be eligible for overtime. So why would the arbitrator expect him to have gotten overtime?
And under what was finally agreed to as part of the Police Association labor contract, they have, when an officer is brought back on the retire-rehire program, they have full rights under the labor contract, which includes overtime opportunities.
And so I just want to put this on the record. So basically, we either give him $100,000 today, or we go to arbitration, and since we normally lose arbitration, the arbitration would allow him to get the $100,000.
$100,000, probably more than $100,000. That's
Don't give the motherfucker a dime.
Any further questions? Public testimony on this item, Carl?
Yes, we have 7 people who signed up.
Very good.
The first 3 are Joe Walsh, Philip J. Wolf, and Ryan Hayes.
Thank you. 2 minutes of the record.
Good afternoon. Some of you know I used to be the chief union steward for the IBEW, and I handled arbitrations and terminations in the federal sector. So it's very close to what you're being faced with now. There's a couple of things when I read this that I did not understand. Nobody is saying what the guy said. So it's gotta be really bad. I don't know what he said. I read this morning accusations, and it just said he said something derogatory, and it was kind of racist, and kind of this and kind of that, and we're going to give him $100,000 because we're terrified of arbitration. Well, let me put it to you this way. If you cannot take a case before an arbitrator, and a racist made a comment in front of his peers, at an official function, which is roll call is official, and the mayor and the chief of police fired them, and you can't sustain that, you got a problem with your people that are representing you. Because I could take that case and win it. I know that. I could take that. I cannot imagine any arbitrator looking me in the eye and listening to me say to him, that man is a racist, and he's a cop, and he carries a gun. God almighty, the chief of police fired him, and a mayor fired him, and lose the case? How in God's name is that possible? Here's a question I asked your city attorney over there. I said, how often do you redo your arbitrators? She said, well, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years, something like that. We used to do ours every 3 years. Completely wiped them out, got new arbitrators. And the arbitrators have to be people of reason. Don't do this. You vote for this, it'll come back and bite you in the ass.